How many times have you seen in the news a defendant in court who is completely innocent get railroaded? It's actually happened dozens of times just this year alone. There are a lot of people that don't know this, but when it comes to trials, there is a lot of tricks that the prosecuting attorney will use to trick defendants into confessing or basically getting themselves in more trouble. And believe it or not, they're not punished for doing these things, even though it's totally unethical. So today we gonna not tell you what the prosecuting attorneys and the courts won't tell you about how to protect yourself in the courtroom. So the first thing that the courts and the prosecutors won't tell you is something that most people already know. There's a reason why they call it the courtroom. There is a reason why they call it the courtroom, because it is a room where the court is. But what you might not know is that is also the best place for you to be if you're re-representing yourself. In other words, the closer you can be to the judge, the better off you are. That means if you're in the gallery up above or down below, you're at a disadvantage. Being close to the judge gives you some psychological advantages over the prosecution. Why? Because generally judges don't like to make eye contact with anybody in the courtroom except for the attorneys. And by being close to the judge, you establish your presence. You let them know that you're there. And it's very hard for a judge to ignore somebody who's right in front of him. The problem with being far away is that the judge may not notice you, may not see you. And if the judge doesn't see you, you may not get the opportunity to speak. The second that you stand up and the judge looks down and sees you, the judge is going to recognize that there's a person who needs to be addressed. And if you're the only one standing up, you've got the judge's attention. Now, if you're up in the gallery or down below, it's much harder to get the judge's attention. You'll probably have to stand up and then wait for the judge to look over. And by then, he may have already forgotten about you. Or maybe he'll see you, but he'll keep talking and talking and talking. And the next thing you know, you've been ignored for 15 minutes. By being close to the judge, you also avoid having to listen to the entire room echoing. So when the judge talks, you hear it. When the prosecutor talks, you hear it. When the bailiff talks, you hear it. You don't have to strain your ears to listen to everything that's going on. Now, if you're up in the gallery or down below, the acoustics make it extremely difficult to hear what's going on. You might think it's easy to pick up every little word, but the truth is sometimes the words get jumbled together. You might miss an important word here or there, which may cause you to miss an important point or two. Also, remember that the judge controls the courtroom. So if you're close to the judge, you're close to where all the power lies. If you're far away, you're just another face in the crowd. Now, it's not impossible to win your case if you're far away, but it's much harder to do. Another thing that the courts and the prosecutors won't tell you is that when you're in court, it's your responsibility to help the judge understand the law. Believe it or not, judges don't always know the law. Just kidding. They usually do know the law. But most judges like to pretend like they don't know the law. Why? Because they want you to tell them the law. Here's the way it works. After the judge makes his ruling, he'll say something like, "Is there any law that I overlooked?" Then someone in the courtroom has to answer, "No, Your Honor, there's no law you overlooked." This lets the judge know that everyone agrees with his ruling. And this helps save him from making a mistake. So, if you don't tell the judge the law, he could potentially rule against you because he thinks that you're not telling him the law. But if you cite the correct laws to the judge, he'll feel more confident in his ruling. And if he feels like he's made a mistake, he'll change his ruling. So, if you find that the judge is ruling against you, simply stand up and politely remind the judge of the correct law. Be super nice about it. Don't sound mean or rude. Just calmly state the correct law and the judge will usually agree with you. The next thing that the courts and the prosecutors won't tell you is that you should never accept a plea bargain from the prosecutor unless you've talked to your own attorney first. And that's not even the whole story, because the truth is you shouldn't accept a plea bargain unless you've talked to an attorney at all, whether it's your own attorney or a private attorney that you hire. Prosecutors often take advantage of people who don't know their rights. And one of the biggest things that they lines try to do is force you to plead guilty to lesser charges so that you can go home. But if you plead guilty to those lesser charges, you're essentially waiving your rights to defend yourself on the greater charges. So if you have a good defense on the original charges, you don't want to waive those rights. One way that prosecutors get defendants to plead guilty to lesser charges is by saying something like, "Listen, you don't want to go to trial, right? You don't want to spend the next 5 years in jail, do you? Well, here's your chance to go home. We'll drop the first-degree murder charge, and you can plead guilty to manslaughter." Now, on the surface, that sounds like a really good deal, but what if you had a great defense for the murder charge? What if you could prove that you were somewhere else when the murder took place? Well, now you can't. The prosecutor knows that you're giving up your right to defend yourself on that murder charge. He also knows that you're giving up your right to call witnesses to testify in your defense on that charge. And he knows that you're giving up all your rights to cross-examine the prosecution as witnesses on that charge. In other words, the prosecutor knows that he's got you dead to rights on the lesser charge, but he's hoping that you're too scared to defend yourself on the greater charge. The fourth thing that the courts and the prosecutors won't tell you is that you should never answer a question in court unless you've thought about it for at least 24 hours. Think about it. If you're in court and the prosecutor asks you a question, you need to think about what you say. If you say something wrong, it could end your entire case. But if you ask for 24 hours to consider the question, then you'll have time to think about how to answer it. Now, it's not a guarantee that you'll come up with the perfect answer after 24 hours, but it's better than answering right away. So, if you're ever put on the stand and the prosecutor asks you a tough question, just say something like, "Your Honor, I would like 24 hours to consider my answer," and the judge will usually give you that time. The reason why the courts and the prosecutors don't want you to know this is because they hope that your lines crack under pressure. They hope that you'll start speaking before you think about what you're saying. If that happens, you're basically screwed. If you want to know the 6 things that the courts and the prosecutors won't tell you, watch the video that's on your screen now. Also, please make sure that you like this video and subscribe so that you never miss one of our videos again.